Okay, so we have a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and today it's great to have Lauren here. Lauren, you're somebody that's been a pioneer, I would say, of a new type of PR, performance-based PR. There's a lot of different PR companies out there. The standard has kind of been like, hey, you have something interesting, put it out there in the world, try to get it in major publications. But you've really been focused on driving results monetarily for brands, figuring out the affiliate side of things, making these companies get press that can convert to more sales. And you've now, I think, hit like 4 trillion impressions, really an incredible number. So I'm excited to have you here and to get into your story.
Thank you so much for having me, Ben. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So just kind of going back to the beginning, how did your interest in the world of like communications, PR, marketing, it seems like your career has kind of revolved around that. Like, how did that passion start?
Great question. So I actually studied communications in college. I went to USC, and it was interesting because it was a lot of textbook communications. And I remember that when I took a PR course there, it was helpful in that it provided a lot of the structure of how do you build a media list, how do you create a press release. But even then, and this was quite some time ago now, it felt outdated a bit. But I would say that's the extent of like where my curiosity around kind of communications kind of started. I've always been very relationship driven in my life, and I like interacting with people. And so communications just naturally lends itself very well to that. I also hated math, so communications was like my default major. But after that, I worked at a startup accelerator called Start Engine, which I was the first employee of, and it later became one of the most kind of well-known crowdfunding platforms. They pivoted kind of their business model a bit. But while I was there, it was really exciting because I got to oversee 40 different startups through them joining the program and vetting them to demo day and kind of when they were presenting their business to investors. So really dipped my toes in like entrepreneurship kind of through that experience. After that, I was at Scopely, which is a mobile gaming company. I was also a really early employee there. I was leading corporate communications for them, working directly with the CEO, and started, managing our PR agencies there and really defining kind of the communications plans. And that sold last year, had a really amazing exit and grew to like over thousands of people. So it was really incredible to be part of a fast growing startup that had a really successful exit as well. And after that, I met Katarina Schneider, who's the founder of Ritual. And she had shared her vision to build this, consumer health brand based on her experience in becoming pregnant and turning around the label of her prenatals and realizing these are not ingredients that she would be, ingesting through her food. And why are women taking these products, every day in one of their most vulnerable life stages? And so I joined her as founding team and our VP of marketing there, heading up communications. I also there oversaw all of our PR agencies. We worked with a lot of really renowned, amazing agencies across the US. But I felt that there were like some gaps in terms of like the, customer experience that we had. But most notably, I felt like those agencies weren't really evolving into where publishers were evolving, and that publishers are interested in sharing what's interesting and compelling about a brand for their audience and what's going to authentically resonate, but also the business opportunity for partnering with the brand, meaning how is this brand going to help them generate affiliate revenue, and help make sure that publishing remains a lucrative business, as publishers have leaned into commerce as one of their primary revenue generation tactics. So I really realized there was this gap in how PR agencies were evolving to meet modern publishers and modern brands' needs. I also, at the same time, could not find an affiliate agency that I trusted with our brand. I felt like they were all very bottom funnel, meaning turning on loyalty deal sites. And I was like, I wouldn't want Ritual to show up on any of these sites. We were very protective with our brand. We didn't run discounts. And yet it felt like that was one of the only levers that affiliate agencies were pulling without recognizing that, hey, BuzzFeed and Vogue and Meredith and Hearst, they are starting to really become involved in affiliate marketing. And this is like very integral to a modern press strategy. So long story short, kind of digested like those learnings and ended up creating Dreamday, which, as you mentioned, is a performance PR agency. We coined that term in 2019 to really encompass the best of PR and affiliate as part of one synergistic strategy. So our publicists are really trained to understand performance from an affiliate perspective, and our affiliate marketers are uniquely trained in understanding how to storytell on behalf of a brand. Which I receive hundreds of pitches at my publication, which I'll get into next. And it's pretty bleak out there in terms of the emails that I receive from affiliate agencies. So typically, your PR agency is never talking to your affiliate agency and vice versa. With our strategy, we're able to leverage the synergies of both on a daily, minute by minute basis to really garner the highest quality of hits and the highest quantity of hits for our clients. And without going on too much of a tangent, a year into starting that business, my co-founder and I started discussing a passion project, which became The Quality Edit, which is a trusted publication that really talks about cool and awesome consumer brands. And that ended up turning into a second agency inadvertently through another kind of aha moment I had at Ritual, where we were forging a lot of Ritual's most lucrative partnerships with publishers like BuzzFeed and Well and Good and Pure Wow. But they also weren't really like nimble enough to understand how to create programs that would back out for brands from a paid social acquisition perspective. And so that led to the creation of our second agency, which is called Quality Media, of which I'm a co-founder of. And there's a ton of synergies between the both agencies, and a lot of shared clients. But yeah, I divide my time between running both of those.
You gotta get. I'm sure you're pretty good at that.
I
A lot to
try.
get around. So
Yeah.
kind of just like going back for a second to the time at like Start Engine and then eventually with communications at Scopely. I mean, I'm sure at Start Engine, because you mentioned how many companies you're involved in, like helping get onboarded and things like that, you started to realize like startup PR could be much better. I mean, now you represent a lot of different companies that, they're not really startups, but they were in that phase and you watch them go through that phase. Like, what did you learn about like how to articulate the message of these companies and bring them out through that time at Start Engine and then kind of scaling it up through Scopely that's channeled into what you do today at Dreamday?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that actually like Ritual taught me best was listening to your customer. So I think a lot of startups need to really start there. At Ritual, we walked down the street on Melrose Avenue in Los Angeles. We started asking, um, you know, every woman that we saw, what prenatal vitamin do you take? And most of them, practically all of them, said, I've been taking the same vitamin for 7 years. And they're like very proud of that. And it's like, oh, that's really, awesome. Like, what is it? Half of them maybe couldn't say what they're taking. They just know they're taking a vitamin, but 0% of them could name the brand that they were taking. So obviously through that experience, we realized, wow, there's really an opportunity. And this was, 9 years ago before all the other, consumer D2C vitamin boom. But we realized there was an opportunity to build a trusted brand that people actually like recognized and that had a community and, you know, um, they could trust the products that were coming from that brand and had like an affinity towards. But then also I think another kind of like anecdote is really understanding why are people like purchasing from you? Like what is that product market fit look like? And what is it that from your messaging, let's say you have 5 different messages that you're trying to say. Like actually at Ritual, we polled our customers and we said, is it that you buy us because we have traceable ingredients and you can see on this map where every ingredient comes from? Or is it because we have high quality ingredients? Or is it because, you like that we're female founded? So I think number one thing is really like listening to the customer and then making sure that your messaging is reflective to, to help distill that message in a very clear way and prioritize the message so that it's not ultimately confusing. I think at the time we were like, traceability is the number one thing, like people care most about traceable ingredients. And then everyone said, for the most part, like we actually buy Ritual because we trust your ingredients and that they are like very high quality ingredients that we feel comfortable putting in our bodies. We trust that you're going to always deliver on that promise. So I think from the very beginning of, having a startup is understanding kind of what are like your key value propositions, but don't just shout them in an echo chamber. You need to be pulling actual customers and ensuring that one, you have product market fit, and two, be gathering feedback of like, does this message actually resonate? Or between these two messages, like which hits home, harder? And then like lean into that and then be continuously iterating, right? Because obviously the brand and your customers like change with time. So be continuously like listening, asking for feedback, and then refining the messaging as you go. And yeah, to your point, like at Dreamday, we started working with a lot of startups initially, but we've grown into larger and larger, companies, um, which has been nice in a lot of ways because they come to us with a lot of kind of the messaging already, defined. And while it's very much still like a collaborative experience and understanding, yes, you say that these messages are, top priority, but the media is interested in XYZ. And here's how your messages can help ladder up into what's actually topical and going to cut through the noise. That's more of like, our priority with our clients now.
Mhm. And like just this term that you guys have really focused on, this performance PR term, what does that entail that's different from the typical PR?
Yeah, absolutely. So, typically when you work with a PR agency, they'll give you like a UVPM metric. So they'll say, you got 500 million views this month. And I was always really frustrated because while I loved like storytelling, I was like, okay, we're shelling out a pretty big retainer and you're telling me that you got 500 million views. But when I go and look at my GA data, I don't see any increase in traffic. I don't see any increase in like revenue. Like, what are these views and what are they doing for me?
Right.
So it felt like very much like a black box. And so I think performance PR really demystifies and makes kind of that black box less opaque, if you will, and being able to really share, here's a press that we garnered for you, but here's the performance of that press from an actual traffic and revenue standpoint when it's being driven through the affiliate channel. And how can we really leverage affiliate and PR to work hand in hand together to garner like the highest quality press and the highest quantity of press? So that, let's say when we're pitching Wirecutter, we can say, here's what's cool about, our place is always pan, but here's also like the commission rate they can offer. Here's what their earnings per click looks like. Here's what their average AOV is. And so how do we kind of tell that story, like I said, to like really meet modern publishers where they're at, where they have editors, but they also have commerce managers and affiliate managers that are like assessing every opportunity. So I believe that, one hand without the other is like going to give you suboptimal results and not make you as competitive with, whatever competitors that you're competing with in your category.
Mhm. So you've gotten some like incredible revenue growth for some of these companies that you've helped with, and like made them just they're just more efficient in the way they kind of went to market. One of which is HelloFresh. I mean, they've done a lot of different things, HelloFresh in the PR world, and they've kind of been all around in terms of their strategy. What did you do different there that helped HelloFresh get like this substantial increase?
Yeah, so HelloFresh is actually a client of Quality Media. So I want to make that distinction that we don't do their PR or affiliate marketing, but we do help them on the advertising side, on the paid social advertising side. So with HelloFresh, it's really about our approach to this like 360 ecosystem surrounded by really third-party validation. So with HelloFresh, we're doing things like authoring, sponsored content, creating landing pages, creating UGC creative with our trusted creator rosters. We have over 100 of them that are trained in performance creative. And then whitelisting, which for those who are not familiar, is when you're using your media spend, but putting it behind a trusted handle, whether that's coming from a publication or whether that's coming from an influencer or creator. With Quality Media, we do all of that. So when the customer is seeing an ad from, let's say, HelloFresh, we might test sending that traffic to one of our editorials, to one of our landing pages, but also that creative is going to be like thumb stopping UGC creative that feels topical, feels relevant, is on trend, and is not going to be like, a polished photography that like was shot in a studio that no one's going to, engage with. So If you go to qualitymedia.com, you'll see some examples of like the creatives that I'm talking about, but they are like those kind of creatives that kind of stop you in your tracks as you're scrolling through your feed and kind of command the attention and help, help drive actual revenue by increasing click-through rate and conversion rate on those ads.
Mhm. And why have them like kind of two separate companies like this? Because there is some overlap, it seems.
Absolutely. It's a great question. The honest answer is that we just started both separately. Like I had started Dreamday, and then after I co-founded Quality Media with Dreamday, I don't have any co-founders. With Quality Media, I have two co-founders. One Lee, who leads all of our performance division, and the other Scott, who works on the BD front with me, as well as handles all of our editorial that you can find on thequalityedit.com. The two are different scopes in that Dreamday is PR and affiliate, and Quality Media is paid social advertising focused on third-party credibility. So those are quite two different scopes, but I think there is a world where the two can and should live together because the through line is really between both agencies. How do we help you as a brand get third-party credibility, which is really needed for modern brands to succeed now, right? Like if I show you two ads and one says, we're Hyperice, like we're so great, this is why you should buy us. That's so much less effective than a influencer, creator, or publication saying, I tried Hyperice versus who's their competitor, I'm blanking, but versus XYZ, Theragun. Here's why I like Hyperice more. Here's my like true honest thoughts. That ad is going to get way more clicks, conversions, engagement than the other ad from the brand talking about themselves. And similarly on the PR side, like people want to hear from other people's experiences that they trust on why they should be influenced to buy that product. So I think the great through line really is like the third party validation that we offer at both agencies. And we do have tons of shared clients like the Books and Ring Concierge and Quince and Ritual. So ton of shared clients between both agencies, and there may be a world, spoiler alert, where they're housed under one roof.
Well, we shall see.
We shall see. We shall see what the future holds.
So, I mean, now you've done 4 trillion media impressions. You're involved in media in all different ways. Like, what have you learned, Lauren, from this of what works and what doesn't work?
That's a broad question. What works and what doesn't work? I'm gonna have to think about that a little bit more. I mean, I think it almost goes back to like, at least on the PR front, like starting there, listening to editors and the way that they work and serving things up for them like on a silver platter. I find that a lot of times like brands kind of like force feed like their narratives and like expect that someone's just going to cover it because they want it to be so. But I think at Dreamday we do a really good job of like helping provide kind of all the information that an editor is going to need to be like interested in what that brand or product is, but also what I mentioned earlier, like why is it like topically relevant? And how does it fit into kind of the stories that they typically talk about, or what's happening in the news, or like what is actually going to get, seeing it from their point of view, what is going to get their audience to click. So a lot of times, like in all of our pitches, you'll find, sold out stats, like, this pan sold out 15 times. Now it's back in stock. When people see that in a headline, they're going to click on it. We always try to reverse engineer our pitches to think about, and even when our clients tell us, hey, I have this great idea, is it press worthy? We think about what is the headline going to be for this collaboration, for this partnership, for this pitch? And is that going to be a headline that editors are actually going to be interested in, or that we're like force feeding them? And we try to give that, true, honest, like discernment to our clients on a consistent basis. But I think, really trying to look at sold out stats, or, are you the top prenatal on Amazon, or, did Miranda Kerr just use your product, or does Jennifer Lopez love your brand? Like, what are the things that are going to make people interested and make them want to click on that article? reverse engineering that back into kind of like our pitches, I think is, one thing that I can think of on the Dreamday side that definitely works well and has been a really like important contributor to our success. And I think the reverse is true as well. Like, just um, I see a lot of agencies like doing kind of the bare minimum from like a, writing perspective, a creative perspective. And I think it's so competitive now on the press side, on the paid social side. There's so many brands. The barrier to entry to start a company has like never been lower in many ways, aside from it maybe being harder to get funding now. But anyone can start a brand. There's so many competitors in every category, and there's less editors writing in general. Like there's been so many unfortunate layoffs that for you to have a pitch that actually cuts through the noise and gets recognized is very hard to do. And it is going to require a lot of effort, energy, and really like a white glove, service.
Mhm. Yeah, the landscape seems to have changed a lot, especially more recently too.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sadly, from an editorial layoff perspective, I think that for editors to write a piece now, like there has to be a very good reason to do so. Whether
Mm.
it's, again, just like a really interesting product or a really interesting founder story, or they have some huge metric to share. Like, Olipop does a great job of sharing. I think it was that they were 200 million in revenue or 300 million in revenue. And suddenly it was like on, every broadcast publication. So, um, making sure that you have something truly compelling to share and like, not wasting your time or your breath or editor's time with like something that's not.
Makes sense. So today, the media landscape is very different from maybe where it was 10 years ago. Like you mentioned, the barrier to entry, like, people creating content and they're turning that content into ways to monetize their brands. And then there's also traditional media, and they're also now creating content as well. And it's become this like new medium. How do you see the balance for brands? Like, what do they need to prioritize with traditional media versus content creation? How should those two kind of work together?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it does come back to the third party credibility. I know I'm biased because both agencies are centered around that. But I think that this is actually like an area that most brands don't do very well. I actually today had like two, BD calls. And when I looked in, and this is on behalf of Quality Media, but when I looked into their ad accounts, like it was this very polished creative. It was very um, unemotional, if I can use that in this context. Like it was nothing that was going to like pull at anyone's heartstrings or, connect them to like their audience. So I think that having that third party credibility is super important to do well. I always try to put myself in the consumer's shoes of whatever client that we're working with. And so I kind of go through the customer journey. Like, okay, if I'm going to buy Cora Organics or Rare Beauty product, how am I going to do so? Am I going to, look up Sephora reviews? Am I going to go on Google and read through Reddit forums? Am I going to put in the search term for one of their products and then go read a Vogue article review on that product? And then that's how I'm going to click through. And so making sure that as you put yourself in the consumer's shoes, you're thinking through each of those touch points and making sure that each of those touch points are truly optimized. That's what I really think like the future of, at least digital marketing looks like and where people should be focused. Whereas the old way, at least on paid social channels, was very much around like lever pulling and, okay, if they read Goop, then they'd like this. The new way is very focused on creative and the right positioning. And similarly on the, PR front, like I said, I think making sure that your brand is showing up in the best possible light and anything that is touching kind of the consumer is like the bare minimum to be competitive. And you'd be surprised how many brands that I talk to and they're like, our press isn't converting for some reason. And then I type in the brand name and the first three things on Google are like, terrible Reddit reviews or like 2-star Google reviews or whatever. And it's like, your problem isn't the press. It's that you have these negative Reddit reviews that are impacting your organic conversion rate. So I think it's really thinking about it from like a full funnel perspective. And, making sure you're putting smart, this seems obvious, making sure you're putting smart tests and, several different channels that you think would make sense for the brand, and then learning and iterating and scaling from there versus just being like, I'm going to turn on this channel because I'm going to, check that box, even though it may not ultimately work for the brand.
Yeah, I think it needs to be a comprehensive approach. And I mean, like, yeah, I think it's a good point about the organic content, like that reviews and things like people need to be really aware of that. But Lauren, just the last question I have, like, what do you aspire to do now? What are your short-term goals, your long-term goals? What's this big picture vision now? You've got a couple of things your hands are in. How does it all come together?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I alluded to it a little bit earlier. I think it's a really exciting time because there's so many synergies between both agencies. And I feel like there's not a lot of agencies that are kind of operating in these new ways. I think, my co-founder has very unique experience in building a brand from the ground up and then taking those learnings and applying them into a service business. And, in that we've seen all of the pain points firsthand. And so I think in many ways have helped solve for them. So I think, my focus is like continuing to scale both businesses while delivering the highest quality results and making sure that our bar of excellence is always remaining super high. And similarly, making sure that culture in both businesses remains, excellent as we scale. Culture is super important to me, and in both businesses, we're very much culture first organizations. So I think for me, which is also I think unique for like an agency owner, I have no pressure to grow for growth's sake for the businesses. And my focus is really on how can we drive the best case studies in the industry, that we've never advertised either businesses. Everything has been word of mouth. So that can continue to drive the, amazing growth that we're seeing in both places.
Well, I'm excited to see, your continued success, Lauren. I think you've done something pretty interesting in the
Thank
space where
you.
you've like brought this like great standard of quality of what people should expect, and you have an all-encompassing solution too, which I think is really cool that you can do paid ads and then also get organic press pickup as
Yeah,
well. And that's like kind of what everybody needs. So I think you're going
right.
to continue to do well and wish you much
Thank you so
success.
much. Thank you so much, Ben. I really appreciate your time.